right, welcome to the meeting of December 15th. The first item is the warrant.
I'll move.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Next, the minutes of December 1st.
Motion.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Invitation to speak. Anyone like to address the board that is not on the agenda? Okay. Well, our first appointment tonight is with the Milford Community Media Center regarding the contract. This is the television that is brought to people's homes. This is something that, just looking at this, the agreement between the town and the Milford Community Media Center was signed on October 8th, 2010 for a 5-year agreement, and I think we're very fortunate that we had a tremendous committee. Attorney Starkus, Steve Menicello, Rob, other people who weren't able to come tonight. But this is a formal report that is given to the board every so often, and the improvements has just been extraordinary. State-of-the-art technology, and everything is done to give the people at home the best possible representation and view of the meetings. A lot of the meetings now are on television, and the opportunities that are given to the public to go down to work with Rob and all that are really second to none. So it's great for the residents, and that's the most important thing. So we're very proud of what we created a long time ago. And there are a few other board members. I'm sure Andy can mention their names in the presentation. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the chairman, Attorney Starkus. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we submitted to you back in September a report in compliance with the agreement, detailing some of what we've been doing, and what I thought to do here is perhaps entertain any questions you gentlemen may have regarding the report, and then before we finish up, I just wanted to say some things and make some acknowledgments, but I just as soon begin with any questions you may have about where we're going with Milford TV, where we've been, and anything in the details of the report that we provided.
Well, I think the studio has been a great advantage. That was a great step in the right direction. The programs that are available on a weekly basis, daily basis, you have programs, I believe you're working with the schools. Every time we go down there, there are all kinds of students, interns doing innovative, interesting things. And I just think that, just listening to the public, they're very happy with that and the opportunities. And I'm sure you'll try to expand on those opportunities as we go forward, right?
Absolutely.
The Selectman Buckley asked for a financial report, and we have that. And it seems that you're running very well. You're in the black. The expenses, how many people do you have working full-time or part-time?
4 full-time employees. And then we'll also occasionally hire freelance work. A lot of that is volunteers from the high school, college interns. Occasionally we'll have them do small, camera work jobs, is helping us set up at events. But yeah, 4 full-time employees on salary, including myself.
And if, I know, like, if residents want to do a particular story or something, they can call you and the opportunity is there, Rob?
Oh yeah, that's, could I speak freely?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, the biggest asset for us has been the residents of Milford, because they've been participating. You could have the best equipment in the world. If no one uses it, no one's going to have a show on the air. So really, outside of the board, which I don't think you could have assembled a better board of directors, the residents have really responded. And when I worked in Marlboro, we had maybe 4 or 5 access-produced shows. Here we have upwards of 15 right now. Taping on a regular basis, producing entertainment shows, art shows, music-based shows, and it's just all due to the residents saying, "Hey, there's this new TV station in town. Let's check it out." And they got excited about it, and it's every month we have new residents coming in interested in volunteering or making their own program, and I really couldn't be happier. And I was actually really surprised by the turnout of residents who get involved.
If I could add one thing on that score that I'd like to underscore for folks who may be watching. Milford Community Center, Media Center, Inc. is a freestanding nonprofit corporation that has the contract with the Selectmen. In fact, was organized by the Selectmen, but it's a membership-run organization. And what is very important, even if people don't feel technically qualified or don't want to learn how to use the equipment and so forth, we would encourage as many people as possible to come down and join in and become members. There's a nominal membership fee, and that gives us a base for running the organization. Ultimately, we're going to be elected and re-elected or nominated and so forth by the membership, and the widest possible membership is important for the community. So I would strongly urge and encourage people to investigate membership. There are individual memberships, there are business memberships, there are family memberships, and I would encourage people to look into it and sign up as members.
Andy, from your perspective as chairman, what has been your biggest challenge over the past few years, and compared to where you are right now?
Getting things organized, getting them off the ground, and as I said, I wanted to make some acknowledgments, but let me mention it here. We have some past board members that have been involved. We've been running, just to give people a sense of perspective, it's almost 5 years ago that the Board of Selectmen set up the organization. And in the following year, the 5 original board members, who included myself, Josh Injemy, who's our treasurer, who couldn't be here this evening because of illness, Gary Castiglione, who's now the clerk, who also was not able to be here tonight. But then there were also among the original members, Bob Berardi, who served as the original clerk, who helped us quite a bit before he had to step down, and Phyllis Ahern, who was largely instrumental in the selection of the present studio location, and was involved with Gary and with Mike Tempesta in the selection of our executive director, Rob, who is probably nothing, without question, our single biggest asset, the single biggest asset Milford TV has. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge their contributions. We also have 2 new members, Steve Minichello, who's here tonight, and Jeremy Folster from the school, who is the school-appointed or school-suggested member on the board. Those folks have done an enormous amount to make this all work. It took us a couple of years to get organized. As you're aware, we were almost 2.5 years into the process, waiting for the Comcast and the Verizon agreements to come to fruition, and then getting started. We had to select the studio, find personnel, and so forth. In that endeavor, we had an enormous amount of help from the advisor that the town hired, Bob Kelly from New TV in Newton, who had a huge role in getting us organized and getting us on track, because until Steve showed up, none of us on the board was really very well versed in any of the technology or the structure of the organization that was necessary for all of this. So they have done phenomenal things, and the amount of programming coverage, what these folks have done. Just as an example, the recent candidate forum in town that was put on by a citizens group, Rob and his team managed to not only cover that live, they simultaneously covered a live school department meeting. When we last met 2.5 years ago, I made a promise to you folks at that time that we would do our utmost to significantly raise the quality of local access television from what was available from Comcast at the time. And we would do so guarding every dime as though it were our own. And what Rob has accomplished has far exceeded our wildest expectations in that regard. And you folks see the evidence of that every time you meet.
And I think the judge of that is the residents at home, the people watching. I mean, they're informed, they're educated, they're interested, and I think that's the greatest benefit that we can have. People at home finding out what's going on, getting involved and all that.
I can even add one more thing, Dino.
Sure, Steve.
As far as the benefits to the community. I see a lot of high school students down there, and a lot of them do really good work up at the high school, but the facility that we have on South Main Street is second to none. I teach in college, and our facility is not as good as what we have here.
Wow.
And that certainly helps when the kids are working with state-of-the-art equipment. And also, there is not any formal thing, but there is a mentoring that's going on, and the kids are benefiting from it. A lot of them are getting into college now because of letters of recommendation that are being written by the staff. And I can be very confident to say to you that 5 or 10 years from now, there is going to be probably a number of kids from Milford now that you're going to say, where did they come from 10 years from now? And they're going to be looking back on their career, their short career at Milford TV, and they're going to be in the media and known in the media. I can pretty much guarantee you that. What these kids are cranking out with the correct supervision from Rob as well as the rest of the staff is phenomenal. They're mentoring, they're helping kids with not only their high school work, but certainly their college aspirations. And I think that's, of course, it's important that the citizens of the town are getting really good programming, and they are. But I think the students are really, those of us that grew up in this town knew that there was no place to go. You'd go to the wall or you'd do something. But these kids really have a purpose and a place to go, and they're making the most of it, and you can see it when it's on the air. And the excitement is quite impressive when you see what they're doing.
In Rob's most recent report to us, and he gives us a written report monthly, he mentions that Liz McGaw, our membership services coordinator, coordinated a field trip to Worcester State University with Steve's help for 2 Milford High School volunteer interns, brought them to Worcester State for a full day of classes and a college experience. They participated in classes and toured the campus. One of them is hoping to attend Worcester State and another Fitchburg State. That's the kind of sort of just hands-on, added, ad hoc, outreach sorts of things that all of these folks at Milford TV have been doing, and
It's not part of
doing
their
it
job, but they're
exquisitely
doing it.
well. Exactly. It's not as though they sit there and say, is this part of my job or isn't it? They see an opportunity to help people, and they are doing it in countless ways. The studio has a gallery that's set up to promote local arts, so there's all sorts of cross-pollination with cultural organizations and institutions. They go out of their way to cover library events and any other cultural events in town. They even step across town borders. They went over and they covered the Hopedale Fair, but as any longtime Milford
Sure.
resident knows, Hopedale is if, I'm trying to think of the appropriate word, if I say stepchild of Milford, I will offend somebody. Hopedale is Milford in a lot of ways. Greater Milford is an expanded community, and the roots of families spread out across town lines here. And I think it's important that we view this not as something within the confines of town lines, but as a community institution. And we benefit from the input even from folks slightly outside of our town borders.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, we'll get to the board members in a second. You've been a tremendous asset. It's amazing what you've done, all the members of the board that you've mentioned, past and present. We probably have one of the most formidable community partnerships in the area, and I think you can see the results in the reports, the accounting, the things that you're talking about that you have been doing, and I know that it'll only get better. Steve, you minimize yourself in a second. You're a tremendous professional, very knowledgeable. Rob and Andy, to have you, someone who's been devoted in town government, chairman of the zoning board, other committees and organizations that we've had. So I think having you in that as chairman and president is most credible, and I certainly want to thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you, I appreciate that. One other thing, and I apologize for sort of stepping out of this, but I really want to underscore the contribution that Josh Injami has made. He couldn't be here tonight because he's ill. He's been our treasurer. He is, without exception, the hardest working member of the board. Right. The others of us are a little older. We have the luxury of a little more free time and such. He has been working at a new job, has a young family, and has really devoted himself and has kept us running financially, kept us on a sound footing, and we could not be anywhere near where we are today without the enormous contribution he has made.
Okay, thank you. And tonight, Rob, we go wireless, right?
Yeah, this is the first time using the new wireless system. It's state-of-the-art. The vendor that hooked this up today has only installed one other of these systems elsewhere, and so this is going to last us for a while. Hopefully, it's state-of-the-art, and we won't have to upgrade for a while. We'll be able to have enough microphones for finance. We have 14 microphones now, all wireless, and this is all part of the plan. You know, we're doing great things, but we're not exactly where we want to be. Coming soon, I have a plan to implement streaming. So on our website, you'll be able to go to our website and see both of our channels soon streaming live 24/7. This setup, we've improved the cameras here so that when we do live election night, people at home will have better graphics. We won't just have numbers slapped over Tim's face like we did for the last election. So a lot more things getting people involved, and the technology is part of that. But I invite everyone to come down to our studio. That's really the crown jewel of everything we've done. Brand new equipment, still less than 2 years old. Everything's recorded in HD. People will make their own shows there. They can put up their shows on YouTube in HD, share their views and their entertainment with everyone in Milford. And I'd really like to say this is a team effort. Like, it's not just me or Andy. Everyone works so well together. And a lot of the reason that people keep coming back to Milford TV, they walk in, they see Liz. Liz is just really friendly with everyone. She creates an atmosphere of almost like a family. She's a big reason behind the success of the membership. Tim is our news guy. You've seen him on Friday nights now. Every Friday night, every week, he makes his own news, and that kind of ties together all the stuff we do as a staff for the news. We're able to show Milford exactly what's going on in town, give them an update on what's happening this weekend, and I don't think there's any. There may be still some organizations in town that we haven't worked with, but I think we've probably worked with every nonprofit charity group that you could think of in town. And Tim kind of uses the Milford Informer, the news show, to tie all that together. So that's every Friday night at 7:30. So check it out. And then we also have Daniel. He's our technical guru. Daniel, you can put a camera on yourself if you want to back there. But Daniel is just friendly and nice and works well with everyone. And just everyone that I've hired has really blown me away with how dedicated they've been to Milford TV. And like I said, the board is second to none, and everyone just works so hard, and it's really a team effort. And the other things that we're planning on upgrading soon, we're going to need some more computers. Well, like we've said, we've had, every week we have people coming in and out of there editing on their shows and on the computers, and our editing suites are getting filled, so we'll need some more computers in there soon, some mobile switching units that we're going to need soon. So there's a lot of upgrades that are going into place. So
mention what you've done up at the high school.
Oh, yeah. So I've been helping Jeremy Folster and Bob Tremblay. Jeremy Folster is the new video production teacher at the high school. He's done a great job of getting kids interested in Milford TV, so I thank him for that. But he's revamping a lot of the equipment. some of the money that we each quarter give to the school department, they've been using to update video equipment there. So we've been able to update I've helped them, kind of guided them as to what they need to update in terms of video at the school committee meetings. So the school committee meetings will continue to look a little bit more professional. So yeah, all around, we're trying to hit every aspect of what we can do in town to make video and entertainment look better.
Well, I think you've done it, Rob. Great summary, and we thank you also.
We've got some more work to do, but I'm very happy with where we're at, yeah.
All right. Yeah, at this time, let's go to the board members. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where to start? First, let me just congratulate you, Andy, Steve, and Rob, on behalf of your board, for just the tremendous job that you've done in a very short time. I think it might seem like a long time, but it's really a short time to achieve and accomplish so much, starting from nothing, because that's essentially what we got from Comcast. You know, they were not interested anymore. It wasn't part of the plan. The equipment was outdated. There really was, you basically started from scratch. You know, I remember when we first talked about this, and, you know, I don't want to say that it's necessarily a novel concept, because I think a lot of other communities are doing this, but it was, I think, somewhat of a daring concept for the town to surrender that large portion of cash over to an unproven, unknown, yet to be formed nonprofit corporation, and that's essentially what you know what's going on. And Andy, I know you touched on the structure of what's going on, but I think that needs to be reiterated. All cable subscribers in the town of Milford essentially pay for this service. There's a very small charge on everyone's bill. I don't know if it's labeled PEG or whatever it is, but it's a very small charge. And then that money from both Comcast and Verizon goes from the town into your corporation. I think you've got it budgeted about $400,000 a year, and that's essentially the lion's share of your working funds. That's beyond the town's control. We don't tell you what to do. You're on your own to deliver the best service that you can for the community. So, you know, that's, I think, quite a structure that we embarked upon, and it would not be successful but for your board and your work.
Thank you.
You guys made this happen. There's no question about it. And it's not like we're talking about $25 a month. You know, you're a sizable corporation right now. You know, when I looked at some of the submissions, just, you know, a couple of things. You know, the most recent Form PC that goes to the Attorney General's office, you know, it talks about, you know, contributions, gifts, grants, $189,000, gross support and revenue, $484,000. Looking back at your first one, which was back in 2010, it was $75,000, which was the most recent, you know, payments that we had gotten from the cable company. So that's where you started from. And another thing that I would like to mention, because oftentimes folks get nervous and skittish when they hear the word consultant. Oh my gosh, we're going to, you know, give money to a consultant, you know, like it's being thrown away. Well, Bob Kelly, I think, was you know, probably the best consultant, or one of the top consultants that I think that this town has ever hired, and really kind of held our hand throughout this process, step by step, really showing us and giving us a glimpse of what is going on right now, which is an extremely viable and successful local cable organization.
In fact, we had kept him on board even after his contract with the town expired. For
Sure.
a short period after that, we kept him on board as our consultant to help complete that process.
And you know, when you're talking about, you know, a corporation right now valued at over $650,000, I mean, that's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart. That's what you have to do, you know, to be successful with that kind of money that's, you know, that you're dealing with on a yearly basis. So, you know, I appreciate, you know, the report that you provided. I didn't appreciate this weekend when I was looking over it. You know, there's a lot of information here. And, you know, it was very good, really, to, you know, to kind of sum up the last 4 or 5 years and show the growth and the operation that you have. I was very impressed looking at the balance sheet. Well, we had an accountant's review that was done last year. from Caplice, Shermacoley, and Doyle, and they signed off on your finances, basically not aware of any material modifications that should be made to the accompanying financial statement. So, again, a compliment to you and to your treasurer, who's not here, and I can appreciate what a difficult job that is. I was also impressed when I looked at your budget, you know, because it's more than just numbers. You're based on past actuals going at least 2 years. You've projected out 3 years, and every one of your line items has a common sense, conservative approach or opinion as to why you've developed the numbers that you had.
And all that is attributable to Josh, and the systems were set up in consultation with Bob Kelly.
Yeah.
I'm not at all a numbers guy, and that is Josh's work.
I was very impressed with the budget. You know, I really was, you know, I really, you know, enjoyed going through that. And, you know, if there was a question on any line item, the rationale was right there. So you, and I say you, your corporation, you have a clear handle on the operation of this channel. And again, to stress how significant it is that you created this out of whole cloth. You know, we didn't have a model like this in Milford to go on. We were depending upon what Bob was telling us. We were looking at other towns, you know, some other sources, but you made this happen. And you're right, it's a great studio, it's a great service to the town. One thing that you didn't mention, the athletics that you cover. I mean, how many people watched the Legion games, you know, as they marched on to the state championship? The coverage was great. It was very professional. You know, that's a big benefit to the community, as well as these meetings and all of the events that you talk about. There are folks that can't get out to these things. And the TV channel is sometimes their only outlet to the community. So you're providing a tremendous service. So I could go on, but I think that the job that you have done is outstanding, and your plan looking forward is equally outstanding. I'm just so happy and pleased that you're doing it here in the town of Milford. And again, thank you for the level of information. Certainly comfortable in terms of your operation of the corporation. And I just hope all of you stay forever, Andy.
If I live that long.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I would echo the comments made by my counterparts. My colleagues have talked about where we began. Unfortunately, the three of us were all here when that began, because it was really greenfield. Bob Kelly had some experience. He had seen the model work and prosper in other communities, but it wasn't something that we had experience. So there was a lot of faith, but there was also a lot of benchmarking that went on to other communities, seeing what they had, and Bob provided a lot of that. So he gave us the opportunity to see that vision. The challenge was, would we realize that vision in Milford, right? And I think we have. I think we're a long way going towards it. Rob, you mentioned there's still things you want to do, and you know, anybody in this, doing this, I think is always going to say, there's still something I want to do more, and there's improvements that can be made. You know, Brian talked about it a minute ago. You know, we look back and, you know, 20 years ago, maybe, if folks wanted to participate in government, if they wanted to understand what was happening, they'd have to come down. They'd have to come out, no matter what the weather or what their health issues or concerns. There are a lot of people that watch it that can't get out all the time, have limited ability to get out. They're more engaged in the community, and I know I hear it a lot. And it's because of the great service that's being provided by you. Brian mentioned sports, but you know, the educational programming that's on, the public arts, I see cooking programs, there's art programs, there's a whole series of things that in all honesty, I hadn't even thought about at the time that we initiated this. So you provide that critical need, and that's important. And I'm glad that we talked a little bit about the origin of this process and where some of the funds come and all of that, because it is important for everybody to understand that's a community television station, right? You are a nonprofit, but basically, as it was already discussed, the money is a pass-through from the cable, from the people that watch it and subscribe to cable, through the cable company, through the town, and then to you. And so, they've invested in it as well, and we're all, to some extent, stewards of those dollars, and why we put together, that's in part why we put together the agreement that we did. So I wanted to make sure that we at least talked a little bit about that history. I've had the opportunity to go through this. There's a lot of information in a 3-inch binder. And I think in some cases it might sell yourself short. I don't know. I was thinking about things that weren't mentioned as I was reading through it. I did want to mention that the town accountant had an opportunity to look through these documents, and he has some very glowing comments, so I want to make sure they're there. The annual financial reports are professionally prepared with full review from outside independent firms with no major modifications. The company has grown over the past years, most recently reporting assets of $654,862 as of June of this year. I don't want to go through all the revenue. Staffing makes up company's largest expense at $140,000. Company has no outstanding debt, but has a line of credit up to $50,000 that could be utilized if necessary. Says, his comments were that you adopted great budgeting techniques, and which I think you've heard echoed from members of the board here as well. And this is coming from the town accountant who looks through a lot of books and a lot of numbers and a lot of spreadsheets. So I think it says great things about the way you're approaching that public stewardship.
Honestly, we'd like to take credit for that, but it is all due to Josh Injemy.
Well, and so it's with that the rest of my comments exist. And I did notice that one of the lines in the front end of it, in the executive summary I would call it, talked about foregoing the audit as an expense. And the only caution I'd have for you is with the independent audit and the third-party audit, I don't know if that was written before you had a accounting firm look at the books and review them?
If I could just clarify. No, and again, I don't know all the intricacies of this, but my understanding from Josh is that in terms of our filings with the state and the required filings and so forth, the auditing was not required till we reached a certain financial level. So it was just that startup year or years before, when we were under that level, that we avoided the additional expense of an audit, though the numbers were in fact reviewed, and all the statements going forward are being audited. So it was not something where we thought, hey, we can save a nickel by avoiding an audit.
Okay, because
It's in your budget going forward.
yeah,
Yes.
it is in the budget going
Yes.
forward. We just haven't had it consistent with the agreement. And I wanted to just correct something that was said, that I had asked for a financial report. Actually, this board had asked for a financial report. It did that when it created the agreement with you. It asked for annual financial reports and audited financial reports. So I just want to make sure it wasn't just Bill Buckley asking for audited financial.
No.
We all signed that document. And the reason why I want to make sure that we do get the audited financial reports is, sometimes in nonprofits those can be tricky. And we talk about one aspect of it where you have one person who's primarily the person who's the budget person. That person needs help. And the benefit that the town receives when it gets the audit is it gets a consulting service as well. So it's collaborative, and it talks about things where there may be risk and how to avoid it, things you may want to put in place that you hadn't thought of, or that one person didn't have the time to go do. Especially when it comes, the tricky part of it is, especially when it comes to, employees, independent contractors, and volunteers, and the distinctions made between them. So that can be tricky as a nonprofit. And there's the added piece that, as I talked about earlier, the stewardship, the responsibility that all of us have in our obligations, right? When we're dealing with public money and public trust. And I know you get it, because I can tell from the detail, and I can tell from our own auditor's report, Zach Taylor, in review of that. I just want to make sure that we look and get the quarterlies. Up to now, we haven't been getting regularly quarterlies, as it says in the agreement that we made with you.
But if I could clarify, as I indicated in the cover to this report.
Right.
The very first thing I began with was an apology that we've been focused on getting this running and haven't been attending to the paperwork. So for lack of a better phrase, what you're discussing now are basically part of the growing pains.
Sure.
Which we have moved beyond. And just so the folks who are viewing understand, in terms of our arrangement and the relationship, the nonprofit was actually set up and created by the town, though it's independent of the town. We operate with you under a contract that is very tightly written to require all sorts of information and control. So this is not something that you as the selectmen are kind of, handing off and letting go, and every once in a while you hear from us. There's an intricate structure and all kinds of provisions that authorize the town to take the organization and all the assets back at any point if in fact the town decides that the agreement, terms of the agreement aren't being met.
Yeah, and that's a direction
And
I wouldn't
think-
even want to think about,
No,
right?
but I understand, but I think people
Too many
viewing
good
should
things
know
happening.
this is not really that much of a handoff, and that there are extensive provisions in the agreement with the town to keep close watch and over the funds. And to the extent that this is the first formal reporting of that is just an indication of the fact that, well, I almost said we're all bozos on this bus, but we're basically amateurs getting it off the ground and doing our best moving into meeting the particular very precise requirements of the agreement with the town.
Well, you're doing a whole lot better than what I don't want to make it sound amateur, so to your point, though, I think you undersell, even in the report, you undersell how great a job and service you're providing to the community. So it's a great product. It's grown in the ways that I hadn't even imagined. I think the employees that you've brought on are as helpful as any. I've had the opportunity to go down there, obviously, and record programming. It's as clean a facility as I've ever seen. So I'm sure you hear that a lot in terms of feedback. And I'm looking forward to, I just wanted to make sure that as we get back to the agreement, there are components of it that we need to meet, that we need to ask for. And I wanted, for lack of anybody else, I wanted to be the person that asked for it, because I had to go back to the agreement myself and refresh myself on those terms and those. And one of the things is all the board members had the opportunity to review the agreement that exists. Some of them weren't even on board when it was signed. So maybe that's another
Yes,
good refresh.
It's there, but having been a lawyer for close to 40 years, I recognize the fact that most people are not really drawn to reading legalese.
Yeah, and actually, this one is probably one of the better agreements, because it's only a few pages and not too much legalese in terms of agreements, so
Well,
I'm
I
happy
think
with that.
that's a credit to Jerry Moody.
Yeah, I think he did a good job with that. And it was with the input of my colleagues and the requests that they had made. So I appreciate what you've done so far. Again, the programming is well beyond what I thought it would be at this time, and the quality of programming. And I appreciate, Rob, that you're even thinking about and talking about how much better it can be and how much better you want to make it in the future. I look forward to seeing that. And I'm glad to have been a part of working with Mr. Kelly, yourselves, and this board to help create this, because it's gone beyond what I thought it was possible. So I appreciate it, and thank you.
Thanks, Bill. So, Andy, thank you, great job, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
All the people
Thank
that
you for
couldn't
the
make the
time.
meeting. And imagine where we'll be in 5 years from now.
Thank you for the faith you put in us. Thank you.
Nice job.
Rob, thank you.
Congratulations.
I just got a text, the sound isn't working.
Last time it was audio. I think we had sound and not audio.
All right. Our next appointment is with Abraham Jaraji. How are you, sir?
Hi, how are you?
Come on up, okay?
Actually, I'm not Abe. He's one vacation.
All right.
But,
And your name?
my name is George Nakul.
George Nagul?
Yeah.
Okay.
I manage
Can you
the
just spell
place.
that for the record, please?
Sure. Nakhoul.
Okay, this is an application to transfer a Class II license to Miso Incorporated, doing business as Mobico Auto, 234 West Street.
Yes, sir.
The sheet that we have from the town officials, tax collector, no, everything is paid up, fire chief, no objection. The application seems to be in order, right, Rick?
All paperwork is in order, all taxes are paid, yes.
All right. So, sir, tell us what's going on here.
It's basically, we've been running the dealer under a different tax ID under the same corporation. So now all what we did is we got a new tax ID for the dealership by itself, but it's gonna stay under the name of Miso Corporation. So it's gonna be Miso Corporation DBA Mobico Auto. That's basically all what we're doing.
Same operation, same
Same,
hours?
same.
Everything's the same, right?
Nothing's changing except for the tax ID.
Okay.
And we're actually taking the word service. We used to be Mobico Auto Service. Now we just put it as Mobico Auto by itself.
Okay. All right, let's go to the board members. Brian?
Yeah, actually, it looks to me as though Mr.,
Abraham?
how do you pronounce his?
Abraham Jraj.
Okay, Mr. Abraham. It looks as though he was operating as a sole proprietor, DBA Mobico.
Right.
And now he's putting it into corporation, DBA Mobico.
Exactly what it is.
I'm all set.
Okay, Bill?
I'm all set with the other department heads that have looked over this. I don't have any issues or concerns.
Thank you.
Motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor, opposed? You're all set.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Very good.
you so much.
Good luck.
All right.
I'm still not gonna try to pronounce his last name.
Yeah, I know, I tried. All right. Okay, next is a very, very, very important topic that this board has been involved with for the past 4 years, stormwater management. We have, first of all, John, congratulations, great campaign. You've done a fine job for the people in Milford, the other communities, and I'm sure that the next 2 years will be even more fruitful.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Jerry Mooney, Scott Christofouli, Barney, who has been probably the most valuable person of everyone concerned with it. Basically, what we're doing tonight, just looking back at some of the paperwork, we go back, because it's important for legacy and history, we go back to, just for example, June 30th, 2010, Bill was the chairman at the time. He met in Boston with the APA officials, with Richard Neal, Milford officials, other state officials, and asking that the comment period be extended to December 31st, 2010. On the CC list, the Board of Selectmen, Senator Brown really didn't do that much, but Senator Kerry, Richard Moore, McGovern, Neal, Congressman Neal, Representative Fernandez, Town Engineer Mike Santora, and Chris Christofouli. So at that point, then we have a very, very comprehensive letter that was written by Representative Fernandez to Mark Voorhees, the U.S. EPA region, EPA New England. And what John did was point out all the important elements and the reasons that we had concern over this. The unfunded mandate. How could the town support $60 to $100 million in excess? The untested science, the unreasonable costs, the unfair competition that was targeting Milford, Franklin, and Bellingham. And as John points out, everybody followed the rules. The companies came in, they followed zoning, and now they're being asked to do something that is really, really not right, not proper for the three communities, the businesses, the residents. He goes on to say, let's try the less costly alternatives first to see if it works. The science wasn't really proven. Let's slow it down and give the towns more time to research it and come up with a plan. There are meeting reports that were held with the Lou Solazzi, Mike Santora, regarding representatives from EPA, Franklin, Bellingham, Milford, the partnership, and also a very comprehensive letter that Mike Santora wrote on July 21st, 2011, regarding and expanding on the items that John and Scott Crisafulli and Mike Santora had pointed out. We worked very closely with the other three communities, the representatives, the selectmen, the engineers, working with Vonnie and Mike Santora. Representative Neal was at the table, Senator Moore was at the table, John was at the table. I believe Representative McGovern. And so they all knew that this was severe, it was important. Everyone agrees that the environment is important. Everybody's working towards that goal. But to be responsible for maybe $60 to $120 million over a short period of time, we just needed more time. So I just wanted to bring out on all the meetings. Rick had a meeting on Friday, and he'll talk about that, with some of the same parties, the representatives involved in this type of endeavor. The reason why we're having this meeting is that there has to be a comment period, and the comments have to be sent in by the end of December. So everybody's coming together once again to say, hey, let's not forget what we've done. Let's bring the parties together. There's a tremendous wealth of information. The towns just can't afford this, even though everyone's goal. There's a report in there talking about phosphorus. John was able to submit legislation for fertilizers, and that is now enacted, and that's something that wasn't there before. So I think everyone's goal here is to work with the EPA, to have them slow down, to bring out the scientific aspects, the financial aspects, and also the hardships that it would be on the towns of Milford, Bellingham, and Franklin. So with that, Vonnie has researched all the information. She's put together a draft regulation comments that will be submitted along with any other comments that we may have tonight. And she has a very in-depth presentation. And with that, I certainly want to thank once again, because this is real, this is big. You talk about planning, 5-year plan, stabilizations, the towns being in a good fiscal condition. If this thing were ever to go through and it weren't spread over, let's say, 20 years or 25 years, I mean, everything is out the window. So Milford has shown with the aquifer bylaws that we've had, the Milford Pond project going forward, everyone understands that the environment is important, and it's probably going forward, everything has to be done. Scotty involved with the basins, the drains, and all that, cleaning them out, and every year we appropriate a certain amount of money so he can do that. So we've shown that we have the tenacity, that we have the knowledge, that we have the seriousness in doing whatever has to be done. But it's just the comment period hopefully can be slowed down, and hopefully EPA can take another look at this. It's just not feasible to do it over a 3-year, 5-year period. It'll bankrupt communities, and why target these 3 communities that have been trying to do a good job? So with that, Vaughn, I really want to thank you for the work that you've put in. I know the number of hours you've put in, and we look forward to your report.
Thank you. I do have a very in-depth report, and
Yes.
I'd like to move through it and then do questions at the
Sure.
end, if that's okay.
Yes.
I can always go back to a slide.
Sure, Vaughn.
There are a couple of distinctions I'd like to make here. None of the comments that we submit on behalf of the town of Milford bind us into any sort of a commitment. The comments are just, our feedback on how EPA has written this permit, and how we feel maybe it might work better from a practical standpoint or from a financial standpoint. Also, in going through and putting together the permits, the draft permit states very clearly that any appeal later, once the permit is final, can only happen if you've made a permit, if you've made a comment during the draft permit period about that particular issue. So if we have an issue about how they determined the phosphorus loading for Milford, we need to include that in our comments right now. If we have if we feel that we may want to appeal the length of the program because of financial reasons, we need to put that in our comments right now. So I had that in the back of my mind as I was writing the comments. And if there is anything that anybody else wants to contribute, obviously I'm open to additional comments. And then the third distinction I'd like to make is that this is not the RDA. This is the MS4 permit for the entire state of Massachusetts. The RDA, the Residual Designation Authority for Milford, Franklin, and Bellingham, is still out there somewhere. I asked Newton Tedder, who is the gentleman at EPA who ran the informational sessions, what this permit meant in terms of the RDA. Would the RDA happen? And he said that it's still up in the air. They're not quite sure.
For the benefit of folks watching at home, could you explain what RDA means? Because I know we want to use terms of art that we're familiar with.
Right. The RDA is the Residual Designation Authority. It was a draft document that was prepared that targeted specifically the towns of Milford, Franklin, and Bellingham as the most developed towns in the Upper Charles. It was going to target businesses specifically, properties over 2 acres, and also put more stringent phosphorus limitations on the town and those businesses. And the cost of that program was the 60 to 100 million that Dino was talking about. So this is not the RDA, and well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll get into how it's different and how it might be a little bit alike now. I put this sheet in here so people can refer back to it, because I will be using a lot of acronyms. MS4 is a municipal separated storm sewer system, so it's basically the town's drainage system. IDDE is illicit discharge detection and elimination. This is looking at the drainage system and removing any pipes that do not carry drainage but might carry sewage that are going into the drainage system that end up in Milford Pond or the Charles River. The NOI is the notice of intent. This is a document I'll talk about in a minute. It's very similar to a notice of intent that's filed for Wetlands Protection Act permit. MCWRS is the Massachusetts Coalition for Water Resources Sustainability. This is a group that Milford has joined. It's about 30 other communities, and we have worked with them on a political level to lobby for more fairness in this permit, and specifically for the communities in the Charles River. MEP is maximum extent practical, and BMP is best management practice. BMPs are a big part of this permit going forward. The RDA is the Residual Designation Authority, and under the RDA, the businesses, the properties over 2 acres, were called direct dischargers, or DDs. The TMDL is the total maximum daily load. This refers to how much of a certain pollutant we can put into the Charles River before we start impairing the water quality of the river itself. PCP is Phosphorus Control Plan. SWMP is Stormwater Management Plan. And again, this is an MS4 permit. It's not the same as the RDA. Dino gave us a little bit of a history, but I'll give you a real quick, brief history. The first MS4 permits ever were in 2003. It was a statewide program. Every community had to file one. They were supposed to be effective only for 5 years, and then the state was going to improve it and come out with a new permit. And this is the draft permit now that we are reviewing is that permit. It's more than a few years late. In 2005, Milford passed a stormwater bylaw, which was a really important step. It was part of that 2003 permit. In 2009, a TMDL, the total maximum daily load, was established for the Upper Charles River. And at that same time, the draft RDA was issued for the three communities, Milford, Franklin, and Bellingham. And those three communities and other groups like MCWRS and our state representatives filed comments at that time on the RDA. And then this year, the draft MS4 permit has been issued. What EPA is saying right now is, at the moment, the deadline for comments is December 29th. They feel that it will take probably about a year to turn the final permit around. So we're looking at January 2016, and then they would have a grace period basically to align with municipal fiscal years, and the permit would not become effective until July 1st of that year. So we're still looking at a year and a half off. This is a picture of the extent of the Charles River watershed in Milford. It is most of the town. There's a small part of the town that goes to the Blackstone. Over 8,000 acres are located in the Charles River watershed, and our major contributors to the Charles River are Milford Pond. The Charles is actually part of Milford Pond. It flows right through it. Godfrey Brook, and then the tributaries to Godfrey Brook, O'Brien Brook, and Hospital Brook. So all of that flow ends up in the Charles River by the time it gets down into Hopedale. If anybody has a question about whether we have a stormwater problem here in Milford, this picture was taken last week during that huge storm, and this is just off of Water Street where the diversion structure was installed. This channel is, what, Scott, like 5 feet deep? And
4.5 feet.
almost never full, but it was that day.
It's moving pretty fast, too.
Yeah, and it was moving pretty fast. Some of the components of the draft are the notice of intent, the stormwater management plan, the illicit discharge detection and elimination program, public outreach, construction site and post-construction controls, pollution prevention, and the SWIP is just the stormwater pollution prevention plan, additional TMDL-based requirements, and reporting and record keeping. So these are sort of the major topics within the permit itself. The NOI, once the permit becomes effective, the NOI will be due 90 days after the effective date, and this applies to all communities in the Commonwealth. The written stormwater management plan will be due within a year. I have no comments on the NOI, but for the stormwater management plan, the comments that I've made in my draft memo are that the TMDL requirements are model-based, they're not based on sampling. The permit needs to allow for current baseline sampling for the TMDL pollutants, and it needs to allow for credits for improvements since 2009. One of the things that is, and I've talked to my cohorts in Franklin and Bellingham, and all three communities have been doing a lot since the initial conversation began about phosphorus and the draft RDA came out. And some of the things that Milford has already done, we've changed planning board regulations, so now our subdivision streets are 28 feet wide instead of 30 feet wide. We only require sidewalk on one side, so we've made changes like that to reduce the impervious area for new development. We have very strict implementation of the Mass Stormwater Standards, and we require storm scepter units to go in, which help remove total suspended solids. We require water quality swales. The Milford Pond project itself is going to have a tremendous impact on the water quality of the Charles River, and in particular phosphorus. Where the Charles River goes through Milford Pond is going to become the deep water habitat. So all of these, this is Milford Pond, this picture, and all of these invasive weeds will be gone, and the deep water habitat will prevent them from coming back. And the wetland areas that we create will also uptake phosphorus out of the water. So it'll be a dual benefit. The Godfrey Brook projects that the Highway Department has been doing over the past few years also have made a very huge difference in water quality in the brooks themselves. The conservation of undeveloped land, we just put a large amount of land under conservation restriction. That land will never be developed, and so by not creating impervious area, we are actually helping. And then we're already implementing a number of non-structural BMP requirements. The law for no phosphorus in fertilizers. The Highway Department picks up leaves in the fall. They do street sweeping in the spring. The town has been very proactive. We do a very large public education program every year. So we're already implementing a lot of the non-structural BMPs that are in the permit. Some general comments that I had. I read the TMDL document, actually, from 2009, where they went and sampled the Charles, and then they came up with these loading numbers. And all of the sampling in that document from Milford, the mean values were below 0.1 milligram per liter. 0.1 milligram per liter was the threshold that they had set as being the point where water quality impairments start to happen. The 2009 TMDL study excluded the reach of the Charles River from Echo Lake down to Main Street, so down by Sacred Heart, from their nutrient issues, because they said that there were water quality impairments, but they weren't due to nutrients. And I found that interesting because that reach is probably about half of the Charles River through Milford. And then I went online to the Charles River Watershed Association. They do monthly sampling in the Charles, and went back through their data, and we have not exceeded 0.1 milligram per liter since 2003, according to their data. So one of the comments that we have is that we would like EPA to revisit the phosphorus loading for Milford, because we don't believe that it reflects the current conditions. One of the other requirements for all of the communities in the Charles River watershed, and I should stress the phosphorus requirements are also for all of the communities in the Charles River watershed, all 35 communities, is a requirement for nitrogen reduction BMPs. And this is mentioned in Appendix H. And that includes structural, non-structural BMPs and the monitoring plan for those BMPs. My comment would be there is no TMDL for nitrogen in the Charles, so I think that this unfairly targets the communities in the Charles River watershed, because there has not been a demonstrated problem regarding nitrogen. My second comment would be that all of our development complies with the Mass Stormwater Standards, which requires 80% total suspended solids removal. And that, when you remove the suspended solids, you're removing the nitrogen. And additionally, if we go further and remove phosphorus, if you're removing the phosphorus, you're also catching the nitrogen when you get the phosphorus. The IDDE program is currently maintained by the sewer department. They have an annual program. They go and look for interconnections between the sewer system and the drainage system. And under the new permit program, they want an outfall interconnection survey done within the first year, and then mapping of the entire drainage system within 2 years. This is a pretty tight time schedule. If you look at this picture, that is an outfall sort of in the center there. It's very hard to see. This is what we're up against, is going out and finding these outfalls that are out in behind subdivisions, and we have a good idea of where they are. We have lots of old plans and stuff, but we have mapped as many as we have been able to find. We're probably not at 100% though. So, and Milford is at a disadvantage because we do not have a full-fledged GIS system like a lot of communities do.
Not yet, anyway, right?
Not yet. When I met with Franklin and Bellingham, Bellingham said, you know, hey, if nothing else, we've got a great GIS system and our whole system is mapped, so we've got that requirement done. We're not there yet. We're working on it though. So my comment is I would request that we would be able to give them what we have existing for mapping and then begin an annual program and update that information annually. And with communities like us that need to also take some time to set up a GIS system, that we might be able to extend the time for completion out to 5 years from 2 years. Because it just seems, it's a very short time frame. The IDDE plan also identifies areas with older septic systems as a high priority. So the IDDE planning, we're supposed to divide the town into watersheds and then prioritize them. And any area with old septic systems is supposed to be a high priority. I would argue that unless the failure of a system is evident, that it is not a high priority. There are plenty of old systems that work just fine and are compliant. We also have several areas of town where the septic systems are new, and those would make them, in my mind, a low priority as well. In the case where we do have failing septic systems, these regulations put us in an awkward position because the town cannot mandate that people replace their septic systems. The only way that that can happen is under Title V. If there's a property transfer, they have to fix or replace their septic system. We're not in a position to enforce that. So this permit puts us in a bad position with respect to that. And then the IDDE plan includes follow-up screening every 5 years of each area after removal and confirmation. And I would argue that if there's not significant development and you've confirmed that you've removed all the sources, why do we need to go back and keep sampling every 5 years? For development, construction, and post-construction, the requirements are very heavily focused on biofiltration techniques, which is infiltrating the stormwater into the ground and using sand or rain gardens or some other technique to remove the nutrients. Retention is allowed. It requires the first 1 inch be treated for all properties. My comment here is this unfairly impacts communities like Milford with high bedrock and high groundwater. We don't have a lot of area where we can infiltrate. Retention, we can retain them. We have many old quarry holes holding stormwater all over town, but it doesn't help remove nutrients. So that doesn't help us with the nutrient requirement. And the program evaluation, there's an annual evaluation, allows for the town, once you've set up your stormwater management plan and said we're going to do X number of BMPs town-wide, to change the type of the BMP or to add BMPs, but not to reduce the number of BMPs. And I would, again, say, I think that, you know, the evaluation needs to go both ways. If we find out that our BMPs that we install are performing better than expected, and we can save some money by not installing other ones, then we should be allowed to do that. Here's a little brain break from all the text. So these are some of the structural BMPs that we would be talking about. The one in the top left-hand corner is basically a vortex unit. It separates the solids from the stormwater. This is the one that's being installed at the Blair House. It's huge. And they work very well, but they're also very expensive. Also, in the upper right-hand corner, those units there are the infiltration chambers that will be installed at the Blair House, and they are high-rate infiltration chambers so that you can get more water into the ground in a smaller footprint than with regular trench-type fields. On the bottom left is a stormwater quality swale. This is just a riprap swale that over time will grow some vegetation in it. Between the riprap, removing the sediment, and the vegetation, doing some uptake of the nutrients, it'll help to clean anything going from that site into the little stream that's on the side there. And then the last picture is a picture of Godfrey Brook in a place where we did some reconstruction. You'll notice there's a natural substrate bottom. This natural substrate actually helps to maintain the right environment for bacteria and to improve the water quality. All right, back to the permit. These are some general comments that I had, but there are 6 standards in the new permit. They don't align exactly with the 10 Massachusetts stormwater standards. The Mass stormwater standards are what all the planning boards and conservation commissions in Massachusetts currently use for development, so it would be nice if they actually lined up, so we could do an apples-to-apples comparison. If we were to establish a regional stormwater authority, there is language in there that allows it, but it's hard to say whether or not there would be some incentive for doing that. For example, maybe some trading within the communities in the regional stormwater authority, or a credit, like 5% or 10% off our phosphorus loading if we joined a regional authority. There are benefits to EPA for regional authorities to be established. It will be less paperwork. It will be easier oversight-wise. So we're asking them to consider those types of things. It's not necessarily something that we will do, but again, we'll make the comment now just in case we want to pursue that later. There's a lack of consistency in the new permit between the water quality sampling and the model-based estimates. The loading for phosphorus for Milford is, they want us to remove 42% in this new permit. That number was derived by cutting the town up by land use categories, so commercial, industrial, residential, highway, undeveloped, and then taking the factors that the EPA came up with for phosphorus loading for each land use type and multiplying it by the number of acres, and that's how they got how much phosphorus we're producing every year. So it's completely a desktop assessment. It's not based on sampling. There is no opportunity in the new permit to reestablish the baseline permits for year 0, which I strongly think that we need to do. And then the public outreach program is redundant. It says you have to target these specific groups and you have to get each one of them 2 messages over the time. We already have commercial and industrial and large residential complexes who have to align with the Mass Stormwater Standards, who have to have permits already when they build. And frankly, our time would be better spent reaching out to other groups because they're already very aware of stormwater issues. So my comment there to EPA was that each town should be able to tailor their public education plan to whatever makes the most sense for them. Okay, we'll talk about costs for a minute. There are a couple of different sources. When I was going through all the old files, there were a couple of presentations, a couple of meetings that were held, so there were some different cost numbers floating around. This is a report, this is from a report that was done by Horsley Witten in 2011 for sustainable stormwater funding. It was funded by EPA, but Interestingly enough, Horsley Witten's numbers came out very different from EPA's numbers. This is sort of the most comprehensive in terms of a cost analysis so far that's out there for this permit. So their discussion of costs for future operational costs put Milford at about $1 million a year. This includes salaries, this includes equipment, this includes materials, and using the same metrics, they estimated that Milford's current cost is probably about $500,000 a year for those things. So this table is telling us that our operational costs, or Scott's operational costs, are going to double. Then the table below is with the stormwater controls with the phosphorus loading reduction, and that is the 42% that this permit talks about, and they estimated $75.8 million to implement this entire program.
Over what period of time, Bob?
Over 20 years. So the new permit is 20 years. They did extend the time. This is from the same report, so talking about if we had to implement a stormwater utility fee, over a 20-year period, we would be looking at around $11 or $12 a month per household. This says DD's removed option because the RDA dealt with the direct dischargers, and then it became more expensive. But this does include the businesses, though. They used what is called equivalent dwelling units. So, for example, a big box store might be equivalent to, in impervious area, to one residential building. So that's how they figured out what the cost per unit would be. So each private residence or individual residence would probably end up paying around $11 or $12 a month for this fee. This is out of the draft of the new permit. It's in one of the appendices, and this is EPA's own estimate of what it will cost Milford. They estimate our annual stormwater phosphorus load reduction at 752 kilograms, and the average cost they estimated was $31 million. So I have made the comment that I believe EPA's estimates are very low and are probably not in line with what the actual costs will be. Other general comments, estimated costs are about $1 million a year. EPA costs are low. We feel, since this is a federal program and a federal mandate, that federal funding should be provided. There's potential for unintended consequences. Instead of growing out, Milford may grow up because square footage needs to increase rents, but if you don't want to increase your impervious area, then buildings will grow larger. That's an unintended consequence that would change the nature of the community. Communities with strong commercial bases are unfairly penalized. Milford will be paying for the commercial property that we have here, although people from other communities come and shop in Milford. And from looking at the numbers, I really feel that the RDA from Milford, Franklin, and Bellingham may not even be necessary after this permit is enacted. If we can achieve the goals, the water quality goals, without going to the RDA, then I think that the EPA should be reasonable about backing off on the RDA. There's one more point, and it's not on these slides, but it's in my comments, is the related to that is to backload the program of implementation. So instead of jumping in and devoting $60 million to building all these BMPs all over town, to run a couple of pilot projects, spend a few $1 million to see how the BMPs perform, what kind of removal rate we're getting from them, and then tailor our program to that. Also go back and do some more sampling and see what the impacts really are after we implement these BMPs. So this is a summary of everything I've just been saying. We need more time and funding for the mapping efforts. Milford needs GIS in order for us to be able to implement this, so we need a little more time for that. We need to coordinate the IDDE mapping with the overall mapping effort. It seems very foolish to go out and do 2 different mapping programs. We actually need to coordinate the IDDE sampling program with the overall sampling program too, to reset the baseline. Same thing, we don't want to have 2 sets of sampling programs. We want to reestablish the baseline for our actual phosphorus contribution. We would like to get credit for the BMPs that we've already implemented. We would like to conduct a cost-benefit analysis for the phosphorus control plan. You know, at a certain point, the cost of pursuing that additional 10% may not be worth it. We think the EPA should provide incentives for regionalization. The government should provide funding sources, and we would like to be able to concentrate our public education efforts where the most value is realized. And just today, I sent off a letter requesting a 90-day extension for comments filed. The Mass Coalition has done that. Several other organizations in other towns have done that. So we may hear before December 29th that it's been continued.
In Vaughan, that would be till March 29th, right?
Yes,
And that was done to the regional EPA in Boston?
yes.
No, it was a great report, and, you know, it's just significant because you provided detailed scientific responses to all the comments, and I think every one that you pointed out is, you know, it hits everything right to the extreme degree. It's common sense. Now, the other 2 engineers in the other communities, Bellingham and Franklin, are they doing identical, are they following us, are they coupling with us?
They are. We met on Friday. They actually have consultants doing their comments, so you have your own in-house consultant, I guess.
Everything else that
They're
you...
pulling their comments together. They gave me draft copies of what they have, and a lot of it is the same. A lot of it, Bellingham especially, their consultant focused really on the technical stuff. Franklin focused on more of the implementation, like how is this reasonable, is this practical? So I think between the 3 communities, we have a really good balance in our comments. I'd also like to say that I did talk to Mike Santora. I called him and
Yes, I saw that.
we had a long discussion about this. He said good luck. He has no desire to get involved in this.
I wonder why.
But he did comment that he thought, you know, what we did, or what the community did before in getting the delay and getting EPA to rewrite the permit was great, but that we're probably not in a position to have that happen again. We may be able to delay it a little bit more, but in terms of some of the previous comments, like Milford being unfairly targeted, now this permit includes all 35 communities in the Charles. So we've lost a little bit of traction with some of those comments that were made previously.
Now, Vaughn, with the 35 communities, are we all, is it like a coalition of all the communities, the engineers and all that, submitting information like this?
Well, the Mass Coalition is any of the communities who are involved in that. Yes, we're all working together. They have regular meetings. They have like quarterly meetings, and they have a email alert going right now with news about this. I don't know if every single community belongs to that coalition, because there is a cost to belonging to that coalition.
So if this is successful, the letter that you sent off, we certainly agree with that, the extension, so that will give us 3 more months,
Yes.
right? And within that 3 months, what would the next steps be?
That's a good question. I think we have our comments fairly in order. We might want to do some more financial analysis if we have an extra 3 months, and look at it from that angle.
I mean, to me, I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure the board, it's interesting that the other communities are using consultants. We're doing it, in-house. You certainly have the professionalism, the expertise, and the education to do that. But this is important. I mean, even if we had to hire someone to assist you in getting information, financial reports, whatever the case may be, I think we should do that. If it's going to help our chances, and if it's going to give us more teeth in going forward, it's something you should, think about and, discuss it with the administrator. And that, okay, so all the information, let's say we're able to obtain the 3 months extension, then I would think it would be wise to send all this information to our state and congressional representatives, so that they could possibly talk to the APA and say, okay, this is important, let's try to see what we can do politically. John, what do you think about that? As far as getting everybody involved like we did before, with the 3-month extension, the information, further exploration, is the methodology, is it sound, is it wise? And just the financial ramification to the communities, would that be something that would maybe work again?
I think Mike is correct that we can only delay this for so long. This is not like the RDA. The RDA was brand new, and that's something that we may want to fight ever being implemented, because it was a pilot project to start with. The MS4 is really a different situation. They're going to implement at some point in time. And for us to have delayed from 2009 to just even 2014 and looking to 16 and 17 for implementation, we're almost 10 years out at the point where they're going to say, put this in place. There's not a lot more we can do with that. So I think fighting the battle within the 4 corners of what they want to say are the criteria for implementation is probably our better avenue of attack on this. And I think, just to comment, having read what Vonnie has done, spoken to her, and following up where she's picked up where Mike has left off, there's a great consistency in the comments that have been made. And I think getting down into what are the things that will make a difference to us in terms of cost effectiveness of this program, and continuing to attack the science of their program as to the phosphorus loads and those kinds of things. So there's no question that we still need the coalition of federal officials, state officials, and local officials working together on this in order to influence EPA. But in terms of influencing them to this being delayed another 4 or 5 or 6 years, I don't think we're going to be successful with that. Nor, if you agree with the goals of the Clean Water Act, do you necessarily want to go out that far. I mean, we're doing things incrementally to implement this in a way that will achieve those goals. It's, what can we do to soften the blow of this, soften the expenses, and make sure that what we're doing works. For instance, the discussion that she just had about piloting some of this. Absolutely important, because some of this technology has still got to play itself out. I was actually working as a real estate attorney on a project in another community recently where the applicant proposed using a pervious pavement. And the town actually pushed back because of concerns about not being able to use salt, the pervious pavement clogging, maintaining that, what the operation maintenance plan was going to look like, how do they pawn off what's going to happen if the system fails 5 or 6 years from now. So, some of this is still very new in terms of trying to influence what the right choices are going to be. So I do think there's an importance to trying to slow that kind of process down and pilot some of this stuff out to see what works.
In a pilot program, And also possible funding. I mean, that would be,
Well,
I think the
funding's
way
not gonna come, Dino. There's no way the federal government is gonna do what they did back with the sewer department, with the sewer
40
treatment
years, right.
plants in the 70s. It's just not practical that that's gonna happen. They're deficit spending today. And, Jerry and I were talking about this earlier. The EPA takes the position in implementation of the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act that cost is not a factor, that they're either obligated to consider or even should be considering. And that's actually in court on the Clean Air Act right now. It's up before the Supreme Court. There was an appeals court decision that went 2-1 in favor of the EPA on that issue, but the Supreme Court's taking it up, and the Roberts Court is a whole lot different than some of the other courts that may have considered these kinds of things in the past. So I'm going to be very interested, I think we all should be, in seeing what the United States Supreme Court does with that challenge that's been laid before them on this. But in terms of us handling that kind of thing on our own, that kind of a massive challenge, we're talking millions and millions of dollars in legal fees and experts and consultants to do that. So, we sort of fall back to the implementation phase on this thing. But in terms of federal money coming to support this, I would be very shocked to see anybody moving in that direction in a way that is significant. Because what's happening here in Milford and along the 35 cities and towns of the Charles, along all of the 351 communities in Massachusetts, is playing out all over the nation. I mean, you go down to the Chesapeake Bay and the numbers they're talking about are huge. So the federal government is not in the mood to talk about funding this in any significant way. The EPA is under a lot of pressure to implement by organizations like the Charles River Watershed Association, who are the ones threatening litigation to make the EPA move more quickly. So they're trying to do this balancing act between giving us the kind of time we need and satisfying that they're not going to get sued on the backside, that they're not doing enough to implement. So there's a lot of that going on. You mentioned, the people who were playing this game back in 2009. I mean, I was thinking about it. It was John Kerry, it was Scott Brown, it was Richie Neal, Jimmy Valley from Franklin, Jen Callahan from Bellingham. I mean, there's not a lot of us as players who are still hanging around. So we've done a bit to delay this, but in terms of the difficulty with that is the base knowledge that our team has, the federal, local, state officials. I mean, Joe Kennedy's very interested in this. This was brought to the attention of Governor-elect Baker. He's expressed an interest in understanding what's going on. But, bringing Senator Warren, Senator Markey up to speed on this stuff is, it's an education process. Because as you've just seen for the last 45 minutes, this is not the kind of stuff that you get yourself sitting down with and saying, oh, isn't this interesting?
Right.
It's very complex stuff and very difficult to understand. And these folks just, the bandwidth is just really hard to get this stuff into the middle of.
thank you. So hopefully we'll be successful. And John, we certainly want to thank you for all your work in the past and, going forward. So hopefully, any word when they might be able to respond as far as the extension, Bonnie?
No, I would expect that they'll issue it, before December 29th. We were hoping they would issue it last week, actually. So maybe this week.
Okay, that'd be a great
We-
first
my-
step anyway.
My plan is to be prepared to send our comments in, for that December 29th deadline. Then if we want to make additional comments, we can.
But like you said, the comments have to be in the document. If we don't make comments in
Right.
the document, then we can't refer to those comments or add those comments later, right?
Correct.
Okay, let's go to the board members. Brian?
Thank you. Well, first of all, Vonnie, there's nothing that I can tell you about the technical aspects of your report. That was probably one of the most detailed and thorough presentations that I've seen on any particular issue. And, a lot of these issues have been percolating over the years, and we saw them crop up in many different ways in the process. But I think you did an excellent job of really detailing these issues and relating them to this general permit. You really did a great job with this, there's no question about it. Getting to what Dean and John were talking about, I mean, I agree. I would not be looking for state and federal help to delay this anymore. I would be looking for state and federal help to get the EPA to listen to your comments. That's where the game is. in the beginning, that's what we needed, because EPA wasn't listening to us at all, local. And that's when we got the state representative senators involved, and I think even more significantly was the federal people. Then all of a sudden EPA came to the table, they funded that report, which when I looked at Mike's memo again, and the presentation on that report, what was it, the Horsley Witten Group, there was a 25% margin of error in that. You know, so the numbers range from 66 million to 110 million. You know, up until that time, the EPA was coming forward with some crazy number. Well, it's only gonna cost 50,000 or 100,000.
Right.
And, you know, I think it was the involvement of the state and federal officials that got EPA to sit down and say, okay, we'll listen to you, we'll fund this other report. And then when it came back, matching the numbers that we said were in the ballpark, we haven't heard anything from them since. So I don't think that they know what to do with it. So at this point in the game, I wouldn't be looking to, delay this process anymore. You know, the leverage I'd be looking for is to see what we can do to EPA to get them to listen to these comments, because these comments are right on, they're very valuable. I think they will minimize the negative impacts to the community greatly. And, I think as John realizes, I think it's incumbent upon us to impress upon these new players, these new representatives, senators, the financial impact to their constituents. That's what's gonna happen. And it's gonna hit them like a 2x4 across the head, because there really hasn't been the public exposure on this, the information out there, other than, folks like us that are kind of focused on it. So the average citizen out there is gonna get hit with this cost, and these representatives, senators aren't even gonna be aware of that. So they need to really realize the implications of this in a real basis, and get the EPA to the table to really pay attention to your comments, and I'm sure the other consultants and engineers who I guess are attacking it on a different basis, but I'm sure, equally competently. So that's how I see the approach going forward.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Coming third, I get to echo the comments that have been made already, but I think they're worthwhile. Excellent job on the presentation.
And she did it by herself, no consultants.
That's right. I want to get back to a comment you made, Dean. We want to make sure that you have the help you need.
Yeah.
This is complex. Besides the multiple agencies you have to deal with internal departments within the town, other towns and regional authorities. So I want to make sure I echo what Dino just said, and that any resources that you need, please see us, because I don't want to give the impression to anyone, including yourself, that you don't have consultants like Bellingham and Franklin has because we chose not to provide them to you.
Oh, yeah, I did not mean that at all.
Good.
And
No,
and
I didn't hear that, but I
And I would be on board with bringing in a consultant to help us with this, because I can't do it all by myself.
yeah. And Rick and I just had this conversation a few days ago, and I appreciate your reaction to that conversation, because I noticed that you've added more as it relates to the finances and bulked that up just a little bit.
Very technical.
The concern I have is in our response, at least in this aspect, there were comments made by former town engineer, comments made by John and other people at the time that were questioning the science behind. I saw the references to it in terms of tabletop modeling and all of that. I think we ought to be more direct. And so if we have questions about the science, if we're concerned about where the 42% comes from, if we're concerned that if it's even feasible that we can get there, then we ought to, I think we ought to say that more plainly. It's just a suggestion. I'm going to give you a great deal of latitude, because speaking in terms of EPA language and all of that, I get it, but we had had some concerns related to even the premise of some of this work, and some of the claims being made by the EPA. So if there's not a significant amount of confidence in the EPA data, then we should be very, very aggressively going after that and going after their modeling and their science. If it's not sound, fundamentally sound, then we ought to take that challenge. Because it doesn't matter what you do after it. If that science is wrong, we could be chasing our tail for 50 years and never get to where they want to get, or them just keep refreshing it until they find a dart to hit the dartboard correctly. And we'll have wasted a great deal of the taxpayers' money. Because I want to be clear about it. When people are home talking about this, or people are reporting on it, we're talking about phosphorus that comes from the air as a result of rainwater that hits the parking lots, hits roofs, goes down storm drains, and goes into our streams, for the most part. Right? We're taking phosphorus out of the air, we're taking phosphorus from the ground, we're taking it from places where fertilizer is used. But it's a tax for rainwater. And to your point, and I'm glad you brought it out, that it places a great deal of burden on the businesses, the commercial entities within the town, especially those that have greater than 2 acres of impervious surface. And that means roof and parking lot, right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So a combination of roof and parking lot is going to get them to that 2 acres pretty quickly. So whatever resources you need, please bring that back to us.
Okay.
If you and other engineers are not comfortable with the science behind the mandates, we ought to challenge that now and challenge it very aggressively in our responses. And you know what I haven't seen, and John, maybe, I don't know if you can help me, if anybody is out there to answer the question. I know that the legislation went in to ban the phosphorus from the fertilizers. Has there been anything that went back and looked at this tabletop modeling for phosphorus reduction since that ban?
I can't say that anybody's gone back to look at it. During the course of drafting and then moving the legislation through last session, EPA could not take a position. They can't advocate for or against legislation. But during the whole course of that timeline, we were working with EPA, and they were using their modeling to determine how much of a credit they would offer up for passage of the legislation and implementation of that legislation through regulations, which unfortunately we're still waiting for the Department of Agriculture to finalize. But as long as the MS4 was off in the distance and the RDA still not even back on the table yet, the department is pretty busy, and so we've been patient with them. But using their analysis, they were willing to say, if you pass this legislation and implement it, we're willing to give you a 10-point credit on this, or up to a 10-point credit, which could be as much as a 20% credit. Now, they couldn't guarantee what the number would be until it got implemented, et cetera, but that was where they were already moving vis-a-vis the legislation. And the legislation ended up being broader than phosphorus. It was a nutrient comprehensive piece of legislation. Senator Brewer got on board with that. He had some legislation pending, and they got blended in together. So all in all, it actually turned out to be a pretty good piece of legislation.
But I'm not seeing the benefit of it.
You're not seeing it here because they're still working on numbers that haven't incorporated any of that alternative, as Vonnie was saying, because it goes beyond it. It goes what he's doing with Scott's doing with leaf pickup, because the three major factors are what you mentioned, the carbon emissions, the fertilizer
Breakdown of
as a layer
nutrients.
number, and then just the organic breakdown of the leaves off of trees. So picking those up, doing the street sweepings, doing those kinds of things. What Vonnie's suggesting is we ought to take a comprehensive look at all of that and get a reduction in that phosphorus number, not just from remodeling what our actual numbers are, but from looking at all of these things contributing to their desktop modeling, whichever way we want to do it.
Retrospectively.
Yeah, retrospectively. So right now, they're
So
working
is there a
with those
chance that
numbers.
we might not have to do anything here, given all of that?
You're talking to the wrong guy. I mean, I'm where you guys are.
I mean,
on
if I'm doing the math,
technicalities of
you're
this
right.
stuff.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right, and I
As much as I've
apologize.
lived this since 2008
I don't
or
wanna keep
9,
talking about it.
I don't wanna, I don't have a degree behind me on this
Right.
thing.
But, you know, I guess to that end, if we're talking
The
about,
answer's probably no, by the way. That being said.
if we look at everything we've done to date, everything we've not received credit for that Bonnie is attempting to receive credit for, if we look at the legislation with the nutrient reduction, phosphorus reduction, and all of the associated things that Scott does and the leaf pickup and everything else, that model is not comprehending.
Well, but that's what you want to get inside the regulations. You want to get inside the regulations to say, okay, you've targeted us based upon a certain modeling at a particular number of reduction. All right, how do we get to that reduction is the question. So it can be by active installation of best management practice structures. It can be by passive, non-structural stuff like the sweeping and the leaf pickup. It could be by the, comprehensive look at the legislation and its impact on reductions. And so you end up with a process by which you get those reductions within the within the regulational scope itself. So as you process through that regulation, you go from we target you at 43% to we target you at 18% or 25% or something. And then to that point, I'm not going to suggest to you there's a direct correlation between the cost of the leaf pickup, a
Right.
20% reduction in the number resulting in a 20% reduction in cost. That's going to there's going to be some baseline cost you're never going to get away from. But your hope is that you bring the number down to the point where you can start looking at additional alternatives
Right.
that might impact this some more. And then what are you left
That are
with?
incrementally less
Do you need a
expensive.
comprehensive stormwater system that looks like your sewer system at that point? Or is there something less impactful that you can do, or less costly that you can do to make it work?
Now, the last question I had for Bonnie, thank you, John, appreciate it. The numbers in terms of dollars, are those 2014 numbers?
Those were, so the report was 2011. I think they were based on 2017. I think they were extrapolated out to 2017.
Okay. All right.
Only 3 years away now.
Yeah.
So I guess,
Yeah.
just to recap, if help's needed, we should get it. We should, if the science isn't sound, we should challenge it aggressively. And I want to reiterate the first point. The first point was great presentation. It was helpful. I know it's difficult material to present to people who are not in your field, but it was done professionally and it had all the components that I needed. And probably one of the best presentations I've seen in a very long time.
Town's very fortunate to have you as a town engineer.
Oh, I'm fortunate to be here, so.
Okay, tremendous work. And, Scotty, from your point, you've been involved. Any comments you'd like to make?
The biggest comment I have is all the non-structural BMPs we've been doing over the last few years. Where do we stand now after, since 2003 in comparison? That's my biggest issue with the whole thing at this point. I would like to know where we stand and what has it done anything at this point. So that's pretty much where I stand on the whole thing. Went through all this with Mike, and Mike, felt the same way. It was all about the science, and he didn't believe in it and prove it, So, to go further and to spend millions and millions of dollars and then find out we've still done nothing.
Right,
That's a
or it gets
problem.
worse because you've done the wrong things, right?
Absolutely. So,
Good point.
that's where I pretty much
All
stand on
right,
it.
we certainly appreciate your work as well.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So Vaughn, you can, like we said, the board appreciates everything going forward. This is great. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the extension, work with the administrator. You need any help at all, let's get that down this week, and then we can
Okay,
approve that, okay?
great.
And do you have,
Thank
do you
you.
have people in mind for consulting that you think might be available?
I do. I
Good.
know some people who are top in
Okay.
the field.
Good,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Bonnie. All right, thanks, Scott, Jerry, thank you. Oh, John, thank you.
You guys?
Yeah, thank you.
That hurts my head.
Okay, next we'll go to the town administrator's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder that Town Hall will be closed at 1 PM on Wednesday, December 24th, day before Christmas, and 1 PM on Wednesday, December 31st, the day before New Year's. Town Hall will be open the day after Christmas and the day after New Year's. I do want to thank Senior Custodian Carlos Benjamin, members of the Fire Department, Highway Surveyor Scott Christofouli, and members of the Highway Department for putting up the Christmas banners and wreaths along Main Street. I believe also some of the Parks Department workers were involved also. Their efforts were most appreciated. I know I've received several comments from people that appreciate what they've done and how it enhances Main Street. The Town Hall gutter project has been pushed back. Bids now will not be open until December 30th. The pre-construction meeting will be February 6th, and the tentative construction period is March 2nd through April 10th, 2015. I'm also pleased to report that Representative Fernandez has informed us that the Commonwealth has been awarded more than $7.7 million in federal funding to assist Massachusetts communities with the development of hazard mitigation plans and implementation of mitigation projects in accordance with the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. The town of Milford has in fact received approval from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for a grant in the amount of $55,125,000, which will be used for the purchase and installation of a generator for the Highway Department. And finally, one other addition, we have regretfully been informed that Bob Dwyer has resigned from the Council on Aging. Bob has been a hardworking and dedicated member of the council for several years. He has made significant contributions to the advancement of the senior center. It's true that his presence on the council will be sorely missed. That's all I have.
Brian, any questions for Administrator?
No questions. Let me just recognize, I guess in sadness, the resignation of Bob Dwyer. Bob served actually as the formal treasurer for the Senior Center Building Committee, and, you know, was always a big advocate of the Senior Center from day one. And a lot of his influence and support is evident in the building that you see, and also the programs that have been put forth since that time. He's a very intelligent, thoughtful guy, and you know, it's too bad that he can't find the time to serve anymore, but just did a lot of great things, so he will be missed.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. Bill, any questions for Rick?
Just a few comments. First of all, thank you for your help, and pass along our thanks to the fire department, Carlos Benjamin, Scott Christofouli, he's not here, for what they've been doing on Main Street and Main Street decorations. I've heard a lot of personally, I've heard a lot of comments back about how great it looks.
Have I?
And I know it was a lot of work by Scott and the decorations committee that he put together, and it's much appreciated, especially as we go through Veterans Parades and the Santa Parades and all of that. You know, I also feel like you know, we should be thanking to the extent necessary John Fernandez for his help in the, or actually he told us about being awarded a federal grant. I'm not sure to any extent he had any feedback or wrote to the federal government on that. But that's outstanding that $55,000 worth of cost to the community goes away as a result of that grant. I know it's vitally important that the highway department remain up and going 24/7. And I'm frankly surprised that, you know, we haven't been penalized for that in any one of our emergencies. So it's great for that to be coming along. The only thing I did want to follow up with you on was you would report, or we had talked about last week, the confusion about permits and the permit time and whether businesses are compliant. And you had worked with the various departments. I was hoping we could get an update on that, but if you could just generally summarize the concern that happened with Plains Auto and all of that.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Basically, I did meet with the building commissioner and the town planner. We'll obviously start that process well in advance of our licensing time. All issues will go through the building commissioner. That will be his authority to enforce. And every effort will be made to approach the various business people so that we can hopefully resolve any issues that may be outstanding with the simple face-to-face meeting.
Which is, I think, what
Which
the
is-
business owner was saying. If
And I
you just
think
let
that
me
was
know.
the concern that was raised.
Exactly.
So if we do that, now obviously, if it's an egregious violation, then maybe a different tack would have to
Yeah.
be taken. If it's ignored, then a different tack would be taken. But hopefully, I'm guessing and I'm speculating that in most cases, we'd be able to resolve these matters with very little fanfare, and that the issues would be resolved at that face-to-face meeting.
So you had worked with, and gotten those two departments together, and I appreciate you doing that.
Yes.
Because that goes a long way in making sure what we expect to see is what you expect to see, and they know how to operate in the future. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I also think you put it in writing, right? I believe so.
Yes, I
Yeah,
did, yes.
okay.
No, they're aware of
Last
what
week, the
it
week
is, and I
after,
think I
okay.
provided a memo
Yeah.
to the board and to them. So
Okay.
they now know and are aware of the process that I would like to have followed.
Okay.
And both were agreeable, no issues at all.
Good, thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll proceed to our old business. Brian has an update for us, for recommendation on a dog
yes.
hearing.
What would a meeting be without a dog hearing? They seem to be really hitting stride this year. It's been a record year for the dog control department. On this particular hearing, the findings of fact were as follows: that Julianne Bonvino resides at 21D Governor's Way in Milford and is the owner of an 11-and-a-half-year-old Labrador mixed neutered male dog named Willie. Christine LeBrun Vanaco resides at 23B Governor's Way, Milford, and is the owner of a 2-year-old German Shepherd spayed female dog named Bella. On April 11th, 2013, Bella, without provocation, attacked and bit Willie, which caused injury. On June 25th, 2013, Bella, without provocation, attacked Willie, but caused no injury. On November 15th, 2014, Bella, without provocation, attacked and bit Willie, which caused injury. On the 3 occasions aforesaid, Ms. Bonvino was present during the attacks, but was not attacked or harmed herself. And pursuant to GL Chapter 140, Section 157, I find that Ms. LeBrun Vanaco's dog Bella is a dangerous dog. I am recommending that Bella shall at all times outside be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained by a leash, having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 6 feet in length. Secondly, Bella shall continue and complete the present training program in Norfolk, Massachusetts, before returning to Ms. LeBrun Vanaco's premises. Third, within 30 days of Bella's return to the premises, Ms. LeBrun Vanaco shall arrange for a microchip implantation to Bella and provide Animal Control Officer Rochelle Thompson suitable identification information. Fourth, if Ms. LeBrun Vanaco is found in violation of this order, Bella shall be subject to seizure and impoundment by the Milford Police Department, and further, Ms. LeBrun Vanaco would be ordered to immediately surrender to the Milford Town Clerk the license and tags in her possession and prohibited from licensing a dog within the Commonwealth for 5 years. And fifth, this finding shall be reported to the Milford Town Clerk in accordance with GL Chapter 140, Section 157H.
Okay, nice job, Brian. Bill,
Motion.
Motion that we accept the recommendations of the hearings officer. I second. All discussion, all in favor? Opposed, unanimous. And really, though, nice job on all those. It's very difficult. You've done it, and I did it for about 3 years. Very difficult. A lot of times neighbors come in, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and, but you're very organized. You do a great job, and it's a great service to the town.
No, thank you.
Any other old business, Brian?
Well, the only thing I wanted to raise was the correspondence from John Erickson to Rick on December 3rd, 2014, about 195 West Street, because we had a speaker who came in before us and had some information that was apparently not accurate in terms of the condition of that property. But, John indicates that it was vacant and it was for sale. There was a heavy overgrowth of brush. But within 2 weeks of notification, the owner hired a landscaper. The property was then sold, and a new owner has applied for and received a site plan to change it to a daycare facility, and also permission from the State Architectural Access Board for an improved walkway, and is in the process of applying for a building permit. So I thought it was good to get that information. It was totally opposite from what we heard from the speaker that came before us.
Rick, can we send that to the individual who came in and asked those questions? Okay, Bill, anything on the whole business?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up to see, I know we've talked a great deal about IT at length. we funded IT to the extent that we've hired a director, another director. And I wanted to just check with Rick to see, I know we talked about the most vulnerable part of our system being the school department, and specifically its backbone and infrastructure. I want to see if any purchase orders had been cut to get that hardware on order within the school system.
Not as of today. There was a meeting last week, and I know the plan is now supposedly being put in place. I'll be speaking with Superintendent Tremblay probably today, tomorrow, or the next day on this, but not as of yet.
Okay. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. I know the town has gone a long way. And my mistake is that in the last time that we met, we didn't talk about some of the things that, if that network goes down, some of the connections and some of the systems that aren't gonna run. And it's very possible that people aren't gonna we're not gonna make payroll and some of those things, or we're gonna be doing it for weeks manually. So that's just a piece of what might happen if that network goes down. But we know that it needs, we know that it needs hardware. We funded an independent report from, I'm sorry, the company name escapes me. World Band's provided the hardware and network infrastructure analysis. And so it escapes me why that's not happening. I know that Bob has funds in his budget to get that hardware on order. So just be clear and pass it along. I'm gonna ask the question every meeting, because I'm not comfortable about where we are with our IT infrastructure, so. And we can't keep going to meetings saying we're analyzing it, because we've already analyzed it to death.
So Bill, what type of information do you want again?
When the hardware has been placed on order, because we can't install it if the hardware's not ordered, for the school system, network, and backbone.
Okay.
And it just, as it happens, we're sharing a resource with the school department, and Rick is our resource. I know Rick's been working hard on it. Any of my comments and my frustration is not directed at Rick, and I hope people understand that. I hope you understand that, Rick. We've got to be successful, and we're not today.
Right.
So, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. We'll go to no business. Lynn Lovell is asking that we give the okay to use $2,000 from the Avis Fund
I'll move.
for a heater. Moved and seconded, that's unanimous. We have several letters from the chief to remove 30-mile-per-hour signs. This one is for Dilla Street. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Brian, second by Bill. That's unanimous. The next removal is for Beaver Street.
Motion.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. And the last one is for Silver Hill Road.
I'll move.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. The chief would like to dispose 2 surplus vehicles. Motion on that.
I'll move.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. We have a resignation from the Conservation Commission. This is Jim O'Connor, and we should
Yeah,
accept.
I'll move to
regret.
accept that with regret. Jim, you know, I think did a great job, and again, very dedicated to the town, a very intelligent person,
Yeah.
and I think the town is losing a resource once again.
Yeah, it's important to have good people that do a great job. So moved and seconded, and that's unanimous. I just have one thing, Rick. I think we talked about this before. After the new year, I think it's important that, we used to have meetings, periodic meetings with American National Power. I think that's the name still. With both chiefs, town engineer, the administrator, talk about what's going on. I think a lot of, the staff have changed, so updates with the contact people, and just to make sure that everything's going well. This is something that, came into the town a long time ago, and they pay at least $1 million a year, so we want to make sure this company stays in Milford and is doing well to everyone's satisfaction, and, because I think, it's a great service to the taxpayers to have this company pay $1 million with practically no stress on public services. So if you could arrange that meeting, I just think it's good to, Al DiCampo used to be the regional manager of that. There was an individual, Rob Moran, I don't know if he's still working there, but I think, make a contact, have a meeting, and make sure the two chiefs, yourself and Vonnie, and then you can give a report back to the board, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else on the cars? Oh, we have the Attorney General's letter and last drink. So we usually send letters to the establishments that are on that list. And I think one of those establishments, I think there were 3 violations.
Yeah, the Turtle Tavern.
Right.
Although one of them was a 12 case, I wonder what happened with that. But yeah, they're listed 3 times.
So the board sends a letter to the establishments, just making them aware that this happened, and we have the notes from the Attorney General's office, okay?
Yes.
Bill, do you have anything else?
No, when we talk about the power company, though, one aspect that would be helpful to go over is environmental performance. Rick? I know that they had trouble with discharges and had some DEP fines at one point. That's one of the things I want to make sure we stay on top of, is how they're doing environmentally,
Environmentally, sure.
the discharges and compliance.
And Rick, can you just go over the National Grid regarding the herbicides application?
Sure. Yes, it's a letter we received from National Grid, certified mail. They're going to apply herbicides along power line rights-of-way that pass through Milford. They outline their treatment periods, late winter, spring, mechanical control, cut surface, selective summer foliage control, and they're required, I believe, to give us notice that this will be done.
Any approval required or both?
I believe there is on this. Not that I'm aware of, no. There's nothing, they're not looking for approval or anything along
So
those
it's just
lines.
notification,
It's
right?
more notification, yeah, of their operational plan. There is a review and comment period, I believe, so I will have both Vonnie and the
Yeah.
Parks and look at it to see if they want to make any comments on it, but it also was,
That was my
I believe,
thinking. Rick.
copied to the Board of Health, Conservation Commission, but I will have them.
Those power lines go right through our
We'll have them
aquifer area,
monitor it,
so.
and if there are any comments, then
Yeah.
obviously we could make them.
Okay, we do have one item for personnel and executive session, but before the motion, I just want to, on behalf of the board, wish everyone out there Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. So with that, motion for executive session on
So moved.
personnel,
Second.
second, Bill. Roll call vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we will not be coming back into an open session. Thank you and good night.